What I am here to talk to you about is why I've developed an intolerance towards tolerance, and why I believe that paradigm is a very important paradigm for one to actually hold. A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, came up to me recently, having tried this for just a short period of time, and he said, "You know what, Aamer? I've fallen back in love with my wife." I just thought that was amazing. Recently, one of the participants of one of the leadership programs that we actually do said to me, "Aamer, you know, before trying all this stuff," he'd been trying it out for about a month, "I didn't particularly like people. They used to irritate me a lot. But people can be really nice, can't they?" Yes, indeed, they can. And I myself, I kind of moved from a place where I used to talk about, you know, trying to manage the complexities that people bring to the world, to actually, you know, being in the world, living with, enjoying the beauty of that complexity that people bring to the world. So what is it that I'm actually talking about? Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, his first chapter talks about good being the enemy of great. The premise being that if you settle for being good, you'll never be great. Good just isn't good enough to be great. And I see tolerance pretty much in the same light. Tolerance is good. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. But it just isn't quite good enough. You know, if you look at some of the dictionary definitions of the word tolerance, you see words like sufferance, forbearance. You know, you can tolerate a bad smell. Now, I did ask the organisers how to illustrate that here today. They told me a couple of stink bombs in the back just wouldn't be the SOAS way. Would have worked in Salford University, but not quite a SOAS. You can tolerate bad smell, but you wouldn't want it to be in the room with you. And I'd hate for anyone to be treating me in that same way. You know, tolerating me, you know, suffering me, but not really wanting me to be in the room with them. But the real tell of the limitations of this word tolerance is that one at the bottom there, which is limit. My son Yusuf, he's 7 years old, and for his 7th birthday, he got one of these little Doctor Who sonic screwdrivers. Now, my 4-year-old Khalil took a liking to his sonic screwdriver. So there's a bit of a tug of war going on here with this thing, and the screwdriver hit its limit of tolerance. And what happened? It snapped. Absolutely right. And that's what happens when any system hits its limit of tolerance. It breaks. Communities that have been living together because they've just been good, just been tolerating, they break. Marriages, they break. Hearts, they break. And yes, believe it or not, even sonic screwdrivers can break. And it's not just the people being tolerated that are actually suffering here. The person tolerating, the heart's irritated, the heart's agitated. There's no peace in there. And that cannot be a good place to be for too long a period of time. So if tolerance is the good, what's the great? Respect. So if you look at things, if you look at the definition, you've got words like honour. You've got words like admiration. I'm a Manchester lad. So I've also travelled 200 miles to be here today. Born in the city, brought up in the city, also went to university in a city. But my first job was in the country. It was in a small Lincolnshire town called Spalding. Now, if you spent all your life in the city and you move to the country, the first thing that hits you is the smell. If you ever tried driving, I had a new Austin Allegro back in those days. I'm sure most of you are too young to remember what an Austin Allegro actually even was. But driving these country lanes, fighting passing out because you've been holding your breath for so long. That's what I was like. It was a crazy place to be. But after a period of time, I got tolerant to it. Now, I didn't particularly like the smell, but I could at least breathe. I wasn't holding my breath. It's only after spending a year in the place, interacting with, working with the farmers there, that you actually start admiring the work that they do. You start actually admiring and appreciating this absolutely beautiful natural fertilizer, which, you know, full of phosphorus and nitrogen and potassium, that, you know, rejuvenates this soil, that gives us the crop, which gives us this food that we're so very, very reliant on. That's moving from tolerance to respect. So how do you do that? How do you move from that irritated heart, which I had when I first moved to Spalding, to having that peaceful heart after a period of time? There's two stages. First one is to be able to answer this question. I know who I am. Do you know the windows with which you actually see the world, which are made up of, as we've just heard, experiences, your identities, your personalities, even your shadows, you know, those darker parts of your personality that you often perhaps project onto other people. Are you aware? Can you actually, what I often term, can you actually get to know your new best friend? Your new best friend being yourself. And not just understand that your windows are coloured and that you do not understand what you see, you're seeing that which you understand, but are you actually then brave enough to actually see the world through someone else's windows? Are you actually brave enough to appreciate that other people's windows can be equally as right as yours? I had to play with this once in a small, we're getting even smaller in terms of our northwest towns here, in a small northwest town called Eccles, close to Salford, close to Manchester. And we broke up into a group of 3. And I was the only Muslim in the group, and there was this big bear of a man and a tiny little Pauline. And we actually had to do this. We had to, the premise is never judge a person till you've walked a mile in their moccasins. So we're trying to see the world through someone else's windows. So we had to walk literally a mile behind one another. We had to do as the other, we had to copy the other, we had to look what the other person did. We had to walk as the other. Now our little Pauline, she walked like this. Now that's funny enough, but there's a big bear of a bloke and a Muslim walking downtown Eccles. If anyone knows Eccles, the white working class area, close to Salford, close to Manchester, walking behind her like this. She walked past the school. Now I'm a father of 4, so when you walk past the school, you naturally kind of gravitate towards wanting to look in the school and see what's going on, and you hear the noise of the children playing. Never once did she look that way, because it just wasn't in her paradigm. Our big bear of a man, he stopped outside a non-halal butcher shop and a betting shop. I'd never done that before. I'd walked past those 2 places many times, but never once had I stopped outside a non-halal butcher shop or a betting shop. I was a newly qualified pharmacist in those days, so I'm popping into Boots the chemist. And they wonder, what's this guy doing popping into Boots the chemist? But that was my paradigm. So to actually appreciate that, you know, you have a world, you have a window with which you see, and often, you know, when you found a solution, you found that, you know, your 8 equals 6 plus 2, there can be other equal rights. Just that I might be a 6 plus 2 kind of guy and you might be a 4 plus 4 kind of girl, or a 7 plus 1 kind of guy. But there can be other rights. Now you'll see this image as a cube. Look at it hard enough and you'll see it flips from one way to another. I want you to see it perhaps in a third way. And to try and get you to see it in that third way, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a fictitious story. It's a story of a tribe in the deepest Amazonian rainforest. And in this tribe, they worship a beetle. And it's a square-shaped beetle. It's a really unusual beetle. And each member of this tribe wears around their neck a pendant. It's a hexagonal pendant. And in the center of this pendant is the square beetle, with its legs protruded to each one of the corners of the hexagon. Can you see the pendant? Now you'd be excused to be able to see it as a pendant, and you'll equally be excused to see it as your cube. You do not understand that which you see that which you understand. That's the first stage. The second stage is, now that you have your window, you understand your window, you see the colours, you appreciate the colours with which you are actually seeing the world, and you actually even are able to appreciate the world through other people's windows. It's then to actually see another person, not as a collection of labels, but as a whole person. Let me introduce you to Liz. Liz was one of our guides at a recent retreat we did in a gorgeous place in the Yorkshire Dales called Scargill House. She volunteers there. She's a Christian. She's a practicing Christian. She's from the south here somewhere. It's very hard to ask a lady her age as well, so she's in her 20s. Okay? She's one of 2 siblings, she's got a brother. But you know, that's not Liz. This is a collection of labels. Let me really introduce you to Liz. Liz is a very gentle person. I'd call her a very still person. If you're to ask her what she wants to do past September this year, she'll tell you, I don't know. And you know what, I don't really care. I'm enjoying today, and I'm experiencing today, and I love volunteering here at Scargill House. And you know, I love the community here. Every now and then though, I want to get away. And I do. I disappear on my own, but I like to come back. I love walking. Wish I could do a little bit more of that. And this experience she's got, this wanting to live in the present and live in the now and experience everything that she actually is today, translates itself really interestingly in her relationship with food. She's got a great relationship with food. As you can see, I also have a great relationship with food. She says, you know, some of this food, Aamer, is hot, and some of it's cold, and some of it crunches, and some of it's smooth and melts in your mouth, and you know, some of it's sweet and some of it's bitter. And I just love experiencing that. And sometimes I put lots of little bits in my mouth at the same time which differ. And it crunches and then it melts, and then it's just that whole experience in my mouth, that spectacular thing. I just love that. Now that's the uniqueness of Liz. See, because Liz has thoughts, and a variety of thoughts. She has feelings. She has her values, okay, and she has her needs. And these 4 faculties are 4 faculties which we all possess. Everyone in this room, and all our needs are different, and all our values are different, and all our thoughts are different, and all our feelings are different. But when you see someone as a complete person with those varying windows, with an appreciation of what your own windows actually are, then you actually can move from tolerance to respect. Have you ever been in a lift and the lift door's about to close and you see someone running for that lift and they miss it, and inside if you actually respect a person, you'd never let them miss the lift door. If you respect a person as a whole person, you'll never let a person miss a lift door. Because what happens when you start labeling people? What happens when you start dehumanizing people through those labels? Think about what happened in Rwanda. The Hutus label the Tutsis as cockroaches. What does that do? It dehumanizes them. And what do you do to a cockroach? You step on it. Okay? It gave them the paradigm which allowed them to commit genocide. It was the same processes that were used during the Holocaust. It was the same processes that were actually used in Bosnia. And we talked earlier about tolerance having limits. Respect doesn't actually have limits. No, you can even respect a mass murderer. If you see the person not as that label, but if you see the person as a whole person. Now I appreciate this is a book and a story, but it's often the stories that we see in society, the stories that we tell in society, that are a reflection of our paradigm, the reflection of our feelings and reflections of our thoughts. Had Agent Starling tolerated Hannibal Lecter, he'd have closed up. And he'd have sensed it. And that's the thing. You sense the way people are toward you. I might behave in the same way, but if I'm tolerating you, you will know. And if I'm respecting you, you will know. The same behavior, you'll have a completely different impact. I used to tolerate people a lot. In fact, if I'm honest, I still do on occasions. But the main person to suffer during all those experiences was myself. My heart was constantly irritated. I didn't actually have that peace. And I moved from tolerance to respect by developing that paradigm of an intolerance toward tolerance. And not because I want respect back in return, it's because it's just the right thing to do. And I started with those small things. I started with those easy little things. I started by not letting anyone miss a lift door. And I invite you to do the same. Thank you.